Welcome to another episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. In this episode, Carey Blackmon and Jeff Mattocks talk with Frank Reese Jr. to get his thoughts on heritage poultry flock breeding and management. Now let's join them for a great learning experience.
Hello, Poultry Keepers. We are here tonight with Frank Reese. We posted some stuff online looking for some suggestions on what type of stuff people wanted to learn about. And we had a ton of folks that were looking for information about breeding heritage birds, whether it be, how to set your barn up, how to line breed and continue, what you needed to do and all of that. And I couldn't think of anybody else better than Frank Reese to tell us about it. And when I reached out to him and he said, sure, I was like, he's in a really good mood because he just retired. I'm super glad to have you on tonight.
Thank you.
A couple of the questions that I had. First off, tell us a little bit about you and the livestock conservancy, mine just went blank. The conservancy that you have. I'm a member and I can't even think of the name.
Good Shepherd Conservancy.
That's it. Good Shepherd Conservancy. I apologize for that.
That's fine. I've been poultry all my life. Just in Kansas alone where I live, I'm fourth generation. I was born into this. And grandparents and great-grandparents, everybody had poultry. It was just part of living on the farm. We had cattle, hogs, everything. And everybody, all the kids, all of us were in 4-H and everything. And I was one of the younger kids. So I was sent to the barn and to take care of the chickens. And so I proceeded to tell my dad. So that was my first exposure, but of trying to improve and get better and better birds. And of course, joined the American Poultry Association very young. But then also the important part is I began to meet every little town and country in a Hampshire and were being supplied by breeders. So I began to meet as many of the breeders that I could. And that's where I began to learn what it took to improve poultry and to maintain. And back then, it was just a different world. You wanted New Hampshire, you knew who had the best. If you wanted Plymouth Rocks, you knew who had the best. If you wanted Jersey Giants, you knew where to go. Because back then, there was people that dedicated their lives to those particular breeds and varieties. And not only did those chickens or turkeys or whatever rent the shows, more importantly, they also wanted the market. They were still good egg layers. They were still decent meat producers. And so just like every other animal on the farm, they had to work to survive. The animals had to provide an income to the farm.
Yep.
So the conservancy was established. I don't know. The older I get, what seems like yesterday was 10 years ago. The conservancy itself, when building the building, has been a dream of mine to try to do education and research and get a very long haul to make it happen. And it's finally beginning to happen this year. And the very day I retired from the hospital work, I got a message saying that we had been given the grant that we've been hunting for to begin to do research. And so I'm working with 2 universities, the Land Institute here in Kansas, a conservative to begin to do research. We're going to start with egg production in what heritage, or what I call standard-bred breeds of chickens, to begin to develop. Part of it, it's going to be 2 or 3 different studies, but one of them is going to be using some of the new grays that they're coming out with to try to get away from the display and a few things. So anyway, that's what she's about.
That's absolutely awesome.
Down at all your land grant universities, they don't do it anymore because there's no money. All your land grant universities, and I'm not saying this is bad or anything, they get their money and research from the big guys, whether it be Tyson or Purdue or Cargill or whoever, paying those universities to produce students to work for the major corporations. There's not a lot of money in backyard chickens.
That's very true. So with that, what makes a breed heritage or standard? When you said that you refer to it as standard, that's the way I've always been told to refer to them as well, because it's standard bred. Not a lot of people want to use the marketing term heritage, but it's standard poultry.
Yeah, and that's what it is. The bad thing about using the word heritage is that there's no thing behind it. No organization or history that can come in and label that as a heritage. I was at the meeting 15 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever, because I've also been a member of the Livestock Conservancy almost since its founding. We had a meeting in Virginia pertaining to turkeys. It was all about turkeys, and that's my main thing, and always has been. That's why they brought me in. And they started calling them heritage turkeys, and I begged them for 2 days not to do that, but they did it anyway. So it became a huge marketing thing. With the help now of the Livestock Conservancy, we have written definitions of what a heritage is. And to call a chicken or a turkey heritage, it must be a known breed that existed prior to 1950 and has been recognized by the American Poultry Association as a purebred chicken. So that cuts out a lot of more modern things that have come about. So heritage should be something is from out of the standards, out of the APA, which has the ability, the past history to identify certain breeds and varieties, that also comes with a standard weight and size and shape and conformation and utility and everything. So when I proceeded to start selling my turkeys, I wanted a USDA label that stated that this was a bronze or Narragansett or a bourbon red or whatever turkey. So it took me almost a couple of years and some lawyers working, but now my turkeys are labeled certified standard bred. So I was able to get it past the USDA. So now the USDA and the government has actually accepted our definition of what we would call heritage. So if someone's going to market them as heritage and get a label from the USDA that identifies the meat in the package as heritage, USDA has accepted our definition.
That's awesome. So what does it take to set all that up, to start a heritage flock, to be able to do what you're doing, obviously on a smaller scale? And I've seen pictures of your yard and your farm where you have your hundreds and hundreds of turkeys, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we'll do 10,000 turkeys this year.
Holy mess. That's a lot.
And I sold 26,000 fertile turkey eggs. I always tell you, it all depends on what you want the bird to do. Do you want it to feed you and your family? Do you want it to feed you, a few neighbors? Do you want the bird to produce enough meat or eggs to pay for its own feed? Are they just pets? Just like you keep a dog and you spend all this money on the dog because you love the dog and you just want the dog. You have to decide ahead of time what it is you want the bird to do. I've always told people if you want to do it and not go broke, you have two choices. You stay very small and you raise the chickens or the turkeys that you want. You dress them yourself. In most states, at least I know here in Kansas or in the states that I know of, you can hand dress them and sell them directly to friends and neighbors. The majority of the cost of marketing poultry for meat is the feeds, of course, number one, and then number two is processing. Because you got just 100 chickens and you're going to have them processed, and if you pay $10 a bird to have them processed and packaged, you're already in the hole. Unless you can get people to pay you a fortune for those birds. So if you sit down and put the numbers to it, it makes it really difficult. But if you can process the birds yourself and sell them directly, and if you can sell them for $3 or $4 a pound, you should at least do all right. Now, what I've always done all these years is, especially with chickens, because chickens are far more difficult than turkeys to market as meat birds. If you get a really good dual production breed, a breed of chicken that is capable of 180, 200 eggs a year, and you gather those eggs, you hatch them yourself. You don't go out and buy the chicks, but you hatch them yourself, and you raise them and feed them, and you process them yourself. The eggs you sell should pretty well pay for all the feed. Your profit's going to be off your dressed birds. But you have to pick a breed or variety of standard-bred chicken can meet that demand. You got to get your hands on quality heritage chickens that will meet that requirement. Some of the hatcheries that are around today are beginning to realize that more and more people are wanting better and better quality when it comes to their dual production. I know the dress weight and the standard weight of New Hampshires, of Delawares, of Barred Rocks, of Buff Orpingtons, Rhode Island White, the Cornish game. These are all varieties that we have raised in great numbers for a number of years. And I've done all the breeding and selecting and improving in the birds. And so you've got to know exactly what they're capable of. So you got to, if you can't get your hands on some type of quality standard bred chickens, if you're going to try to breed and improve them yourself, you can do that, but you better plan at least a good 5 to 10 years of breeding and selecting to get to where you probably want to go. I always tell people, you will start with Barred Rocks. You can buy Barred Rocks from 10 different places, and they will all be different. And so whatever you get, a Rhode Island Red, a New Hampshire, a Barred Rock, whatever, it is no better than the breeder behind it. When people tell you Barred Rocks will do this and this, that's not true. Those Barred Rocks are no better than what the breeder behind them selected that particular variety to do. If they selected for pure egg production, you're probably going to get a skinny Barred Rock. If they selected for heavy meat production, you're probably going to have really poor egg production. You've got to know whatever it is you choose. You've got to go to that source that you got your birds from, ask them what they were selected for, what they were capable for.
That makes sense. Really? So let's say somebody was going to start and they wanted to pick out a bird that meets that. What are some standard breed birds that will consistently lay that 200 egg per year What are some of those that you would choose?
New hams, they're excellent. And they have a dressed weight. If you get a really good old standard new ham, they'll be ready to process in 12, 14 weeks. They'll dress out 3.5, 4 pounds. And those hens will lay 180, 200 eggs a year if you manage them well. Barred rocks, they'll do the same. Their growth rate is more like 15, 16 weeks before they get to what we consider marketable weight. You've got it. The reason why weight is important is that whatever breed of chicken you have, the most money you invest in chicken is going to be in the first 5 weeks. In the hatchings and the feed and so on to get them started. In that last half of their life, especially the last 3 or 4 weeks of their life, they're really putting on the muscle mass and so on. So you got to know at what point. Now, if you don't have quality barred rocks or quality new hams and you kill them at 16 weeks, they may only weigh 2.5 pounds.
Right.
Because they haven't been selected for that standard weight. Another one's the Delaware. There's some excellent Delawares. There's a few breeders that are doing very well with Buckeyes. The Wyandotte, some of the Wyandottes there's some excellent Wyandottes out there. You just have to, traditionally, historically, if you go back and look at what was being raised through the 20s and 30s and 40s and up until in the 50s, and all this disappeared. 90% of the broiler chickens being raised in the United States were barred Plymouth Rocks. They were king. The 1940s, it slowly got replaced by the new ham, and the new ham started taking over, and the barred rocks started losing ground very quickly. About the 1960s, they were all gone. But these were chickens that were being raised on multiple farms, not in big buildings, but multiple farms, and have a history of doing very well at doing what I would call dual production. Now, there's some varieties like the Jersey Black Giant that was developed that is a fairly decent egg layer, maybe 160, 180 eggs a year, but they'll lay a really large egg. But they were never considered a good frying chicken. It's like the Brahma. The Brahmas used to be raised, the light Brahmas used to be raised in large numbers for the market. But the Brahmas and the Giants were raised for a roasting market and to be killed at 20, 24 weeks and to dress out 5.5, 6 pounds. You have to decide what is your market, where do you want to sell them, and how you're going to dress them. And that'll determine somewhat on what breeds you pick.
So let's say that I wanted a bird that was a good general purpose bird that I could fry or that I could grill, but would also give me a good number of eggs. What would you recommend someone to go with?
If they're going to fry them or broil them, okay, so you're talking spring chickens, you're talking dressing them out 3.5 pounds. The problem we've got a little bit is for the last 50 years, the consumer has gotten used to that abnormal dwarf little chicken in the grocery store. That 3.5, 4 pound fryer that they see at the grocery store that was killed when it was 6 weeks old. That is what they have considered as normal. And when they look at my chickens, which have no dwarf gene, my chickens have longer keel bones, longer legs, and bigger wings. That's a normal chicken. It hasn't been dwarfed through the dwarf gene. So you've got that to face. Also, if you look at all of the old back prior to 1950, fryer chickens like my mother fried all weighed 2.5, 3 pounds. So, that's part of what you got to face a little bit. But if you want something that's somewhat competitive, not too far off from what they're probably used to seeing at their local grocery store, probably the New Ham is going to be your best. And I worked really hard to develop a really good line of Delaware. That's first, what is a Delaware? A Delaware chicken is developed by crossing Barred Rocks and New Hams. That's how you get a Delaware. But if you cross Delawares, you can breed Delaware and keep getting that Columbia pattern. That's what it is. It's a Columbia pattern with barring in the black. But the reason we did is we have a lot of people wanted a white feathered bird. It's a little easier for them to clean and to dress. So the Delaware, I think, has done pretty well. But the thing about it is, you're going to have to develop them yourself, and you're going to have to learn how to maintain.
Gotcha.
We have lots and lots of growers in this country who have very few breeders, very few people that are breeding quality birds.
That is such a true statement. There's a lot of people that will hatch out birds. They don't even know what culling is or what to look for.
It's like I tell people, how do you walk? Of course, I'm talking more turkeys. How do you walk into a flock of 5,000 Barred Rocks or 5,000 bronze turkeys and pick out the top 3? And why? What is it you're looking for? Like when we get ready this fall to do our 8,000 turkeys for Thanksgiving, it'll be my job to pick out the top 100 toms, because I know that those toms that I pick will determine next year, the next year, the next year, the quality of my turkeys. I got to pick out 1,000. It's awesome. So you got to know what you're doing, or when you walk into a flock of Barred Rocks or Delawares, you have which ones you send to market and which ones you keep. And so then you've got to decide, then you've got to learn what qualities affect what things. If you have poor egg production, a lot of people focus on the hens, but it's actually the rooster that carries the genetics genes to improve egg production. So you have to know the lineage of your roosters. Was that rooster's mom a good egg layer? Because he's going to pass that on to his daughters. So it's getting to know your flock, know your roosters, know their lineage, where they came from, and that will give you some idea. When you ask that question, which I appreciate, if I wanted 800 eggs a year, what breed would I suggest? To me, it's more than just saying New Hams. Who's New Hams? What line of New Hams are you getting?
That was actually going to be my next question.
Barred Rocks or New Hampshire or whatever. The first thing I always ask them is, who's do you have? Because that will tell me real fast if they've got a mess or if they need to start over or whatever. Because some of these varieties and lines that are being sold that are out there, mercy, 10 years, you couldn't improve them. Because a lot of them have labor blood on them. The industry has crossed them over and put barred feathers on a little chicken built like a leghorn. They call it Barred Rock because it's got barred feathers.
Right. And they want that egg laying capacity that the leghorns have.
So Frank, where does somebody
so they're actually egg layers. You can't feed a Barred Rock chicken for 16 weeks and have it dress out at 2 pounds. It go anywhere. You're going to go in the hole. You could eat it, but you'll have a heck of a time selling it.
That makes
You
sense.
can eat anything. You can eat a 10-year-old rooster. You just got to know how to cook it.
So that brings me to 2 questions. Number one, where would somebody go? Let's say they figured out what they want to do and you recommend the New Hamps. Where would I go to get the best New Hamps to start my project for my homestead with?
That's such a hard question.
I would think Good Shepherd, Poultry Spruce.
If you go to a chicken show today, most of the New Hamps that are being shown, I wouldn't drag home because they're now selecting for big fancy feathers. And like I was
Yep.
taught as a kid, you don't eat the feathers.
Right.
And so that makes it really difficult. And then also they imported a bunch of new hams from Germany a number of years ago. And a lot of these new hams that they have at shows now look nothing like the new hams that I had 60 years ago as a kid. And so it's really difficult. Sometimes when people ask me, because I get that question a lot, my first thing I'll ask is, where do you live? I can often find somebody close by because there are a few people that still got good new hams in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in Nebraska, down Texas. There's some decent ones back in California and I always tell people, try to buy from a local breeder if at all possible. Spend time talking to that breeder. Find out what it is that they're doing and what issues and problems they have with their particular line. I'm from the old school. I think a chicken that wins on the farm, wins in the market, should win in the show ring as well. That's the way I was taught. There shouldn't be any difference between a show chicken and a farm chicken. Some of that is good, and I'm sure when I was a kid, all the people, men and women who taught me, I'm sure I drove them crazy with 50 million questions, but that's how you learn. Also, if you keep a small flock, I'll keep the amount of birds that I keep, but if you're keeping a small flock, then, and if you're new at what you're doing, don't go buying chickens from other people. Try, if you find a line that you like when I was a kid, Golda Miller had the best black Jersey giants in the nation. So every year, for as long as that woman was alive, I bought eggs from her and hatched them. I never bought from anybody else. I'm proud that the line of Jersey giants I had were pure Golda Miller line. And I knew exactly what it was to look like, what they were capable of doing. But a lot of people, now that she's gone, I have to keep a really large number to be able to maintain the line. And if you're going to get a line, after you've done it for 10 or 15 years and you really know your birds and you know that breed, you know that conformation, you know what they're capable of doing, you could go and get something outside of your line and bring them in. But just be really diligent in calling and getting rid of the birds that will not improve your flock.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. Be sure to listen next Tuesday when we bring you the conclusion of this information-packed session on heritage poultry.